Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 339. Today we're going to talk about 4 mini expansions for Star Realms. Now what you can do is you can go to the store and you can get a little booster pack. And for example, this one is the Crisis Events pack. You can get the Crisis Bases and Battleships pack. But these aren't randomized. Once you get the one events pack, that's all you're going to need. So there's 4 of these. They change up the game in different ways, and I'm going to go through all of them. I won't go through every single card on all of them, but I will go through them in order that I think you should buy them, like from 4 down to 1. So the first one I'll talk about here is the one, maybe you don't buy that one. And then the first one will be the one I think you absolutely should buy. So let's go into it. Now the first thing to notice is that each of the cards has a little icon in the bottom right, and that'll tell you which pack it came from. So if you want to sift through and remove those later, you can. Now the first set of cards we're going to look at are from the Fleets and Fortresses pack. And as I said, I'm not going to go through every card, but the first one here is a Death World. And you can see this is a blob world. It's a green world. It gives you 4 attack. And it has a special ability. You may scrap a Trade Federation, Machine Cult, or Star Empire card, basically a blue, red, or yellow card, and then you can draw a card. Pretty interesting card to splash. It is kind of expensive. The next card is a blue world, also expensive. It is a capital world, and you can see you're going to generate 6 life and draw a card. You don't even have to play another blue card, and it's also a 6 outpost. Next we have a Customs Frigate, and this is almost a reverse of Freighter, which is another blue card in the base game. This allows you to acquire a ship, cost 4 or less, and put it straight on your deck, whereas the Freighter you had to play another blue card to trigger that. So this is kind of a reverse. If you play a blue card, you actually get 4 attack. Star Fortress is an interesting card. It costs 7. It's a level 6 outpost. It gives you 3 attack and allows you to draw a card, then discard a card. And if you play another yellow card, you get to draw a card and then discard a card. So like a lot of yellows, you sift through the deck quickly, but this can come in very handy. Here's the first of 2 red cards. This is Border Fort. You can see it's level 5 outpost, and it gives you a choice of spending money or attacking. And that's nice because money is better earlier, whereas attacking is better later. So this is nice to have, and it also lets you scrap some cards as well. I really like this one. It works on a lot of levels. It acts as defense. It acts, it's sort of being maneuverable and flexible in terms of what you're doing on your turn. Next is the Patrol Bot, and this one also gives you a choice, 2 money or 4 attack. Usually the blue cards have only been the ones that give you a choice between life and money. Now we're going to move into the heroes, and the heroes are very interesting. You can see with this first hero, the Blob Overlord, this costs you 2, and when you buy a hero, it goes right in front of you. It doesn't go into your deck, and it's just going to sit there until you scrap it. And each faction has 2 heroes. They have 1 copy of sort of the more powerful hero and then 2 copies of the lesser hero. So this is the more powerful. You buy it for 2, you can scrap it, and you'll get 4 attack, and then you can trigger all of your other green abilities on that turn. So while this is just sitting there, you don't get to trigger your green abilities. You've got to scrap it on that turn to sort of activate that icon. The Ram Pilot does the same thing. It just costs a little less and only gives you 2 attack. And here we have the rare for the blue faction, the CEO Torres. If you scrap her, she'll give you 7 influence, plus you can of course activate your other blue abilities. And then the lesser version is the Special Ops Director, and he only gives you 4 influence, but it costs only 1. Now this is the rarer of the yellow heroes, and funnily enough, I actually like the more common one better. This one you cost 2, and you can of course activate your yellow abilities, and then it lets you draw a card. Big whoop. Well, the more common one, the Cunning Captain, costs 1, and then you can activate him, and target player discards a card. So this one's kind of nice because you can kind of try to guess when your opponent's about to go off and hopefully make them discard a card to hamper them at least a little bit. And looking at the red heroes, this one lets you scrap a card from your hand or discard pile, whereas War Elder costs less, but you can only scrap a card from your hand. Not quite as interesting to spend money and then be able to scrap a card later, but again, the cost is very low. So if you have that 1 extra dollar hanging out, then you might as well buy this guy. The next pack here is the Bases and Battleships, and this is an interesting card here. This one actually lets you put a base you acquire directly into play. And then moving along here, we have the Mega Mech. This is really cool. You can get 6 attack, but then you may return target base from play to its owner's hand. So you kind of clear it out of the way, and then you can go in and either wall up the other base with 6 or hit them directly with the 6. And now we're starting to get into some of my favorite cards here. Here's the Obliterator. It gives you 7 attack. If your opponent has 2 or more bases, you gain another 6 attack. So this is potentially a 13 attack card. And of course it goes right along with the previous card. You know, if Sparky gets out a base or a bunch of bases late in the game, just as you were about to beat them for the 5th time, then this can help you overcome that. And here's probably my absolute favorite card in any of the packs. You can see this is the defense bot. It only costs 2. It only gives you 1 attack, but you may scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. If you control 2 or more bases, you gain 8 attack. So that's potentially 9 attack there for $2. So this is a very cool card to get early in the game. You get it, it just gives you 1 attack. It doesn't really do a whole lot. And then you get a couple of bases out and then bam, you're walloping with this one. Now we get into my favorite pack, and this is the events. And this is probably the one that will probably have the most contention as whether or not people like them, but to me that adds a lot of theme to the game and I really like that. So the first event here is a Quasar, and when the events come up they just happen and then they get discarded. So when this comes up, each player draws 2 cards, very simple. Now the Warp Jump, each player draws 3 cards, then puts 2 of those cards back on top of their deck in any order. This is kind of cool, so you can rearrange a little bit. Trade Mission is another one I really like. The player currently taking their turn gains $4, and they put the next ship they acquire this turn on top of their deck. Awesome for them, but each other player draws 2 cards, so that's really cool. I like that when everybody at the table kind of gets a little special goodie even on somebody else's turn. Galactic Summit, it's pretty cool. Everybody gains 7 influence, sort of very temporary peacetime. Comet's very nice. I like this because it adds more scrapping, so each player may scrap up to 2 cards in their hand or discard pile. And I really like these next 2, and I hate the last event. So each player destroys a base they control or loses 6 influence. So that's very tricky. Of course, if it comes out early, everybody uses 6 influence, and if you don't have a base, you kind of feel like you got screwed, but whatever. It's kind of a nice choice to make. The next one, the Black Hole. Each player may discard up to 2 cards. For each card less than 2 that a player discards, that player loses 4 influence. So if you don't discard anything, you're going to lose 8. And if this happens kind of towards the end of the game, you've got a really nice hand. You're like, ooh, you know, do I take the hit? I'm ahead on influence. I've got a big turn. I'm going to wall up my opponent. Really cool. I really like this decision process in the events. Which leads me to the last card, which I'm not a big fan of this one. So I may take this one out. This is the one card out of all the packs I may take out, but the events, as I said, are my favorite part. This is a Supernova. Each player loses 5 influence, scrap all the cards in the trade row. So that card can be kind of annoying where, you know, you're at a certain point, let's say you're like 16 influence, and then your buddy he has 13 attack, let's say, and he's like, oh, I just need to lose a little influence, and boom, flops over, so, oh good, I can kill you this turn. So that's, you know, it's a less than satisfactory way to lose the game. Let's just put it at that. It's fun, it's, you know, it's lighthearted. They are events, so they're not really meant to be taken seriously, but there's something about that one. I like the ones where there's a little choice and things, but there's nothing telling you can't remove the event, or if you don't like a certain card, you can just pull it out of the deck. That's the nice thing about this style of game. So my opinion is probably to get all 4 of the packs. I like some of the cards that I didn't mention. They're not really that exciting to talk about. It's like, okay, this one gives you 4 attack and it costs 2, which is slightly different than the other one in the set that costs, you know, costs 4 or whatever, gives you 5 attack. So not really a lot to talk about there, but it probably goes some way to balancing the game a little bit. I don't know that the game is unbalanced at all. I mean, there's that Stealth Needle card that lets you copy a card that you've already played, which people like to cry about. And, you know, a lot of people seem to think blue is sort of the stronger faction. You should always go blue. That has not been my experience. You know, I've tried that for several games. I played quite a bit on the app, you know, and I tried that and I've won a fair amount, but I've also played against some other players that I know have played quite a bit. And, you know, they were kind of ready for me and they can kind of slow boat it and then just get to the point where like, hey, I got 60 influence and they're down to 10. And then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, and they hit me for like 30, and then they hit me for 25, you know, and now they have a bunch of outposts, so I've been spending all this time getting influence. So I don't think that the game is really unbalanced. I'm sure there's some things that can be balanced, and I'm sure some of those cards that have been added probably help along the lines to kind of distribute money and, you know, attack and stuff. So my gut tells me to get all 4 of them, and it's probably going to, you know, add to your experience, but I haven't sat down and done all the math on it at all. But I really like the events. I like the heroes, just a little bit less than the events. I like the Fleet and Federation, the cards I showed you with a little bit of the craziness with the, you know, getting the extra attack if there's bases out and all that kind of good stuff. So those would be the 3 for sure, but I do like some of the other cards in the other pack as well. I would say the last three I showed you, probably I would say for sure get all those, and then at that point, why not get the fourth one? I mean, and I'm really just splitting hairs here because I'm like, okay, well, what would be a critical way to analyze these, because they're not that expensive, and you know, it's like, it's a kind of a cool model. You know, in terms of doing an expansion, if you just feel like you want to pick up one this week and add the heroes in and do that, and then pick up another one next week when you go down to the store, you can do that. So that's kind of an interesting way of doing it. And I'm sure there's some kind of like shelf presence or something where you can put the booster packs on the, you know, by the cash register and all that stuff. But so yeah, I think it's a must get. If you've played Star Realms to death, it's going to add some nice fresh flavor and some cool stuff like that. And I have not played this with multiplayer. You know, multiplayer, the Overlord, the raid mode is kind of my favorite way to play that. I haven't played this with that stuff yet, but I don't know how to impact that. But I don't think it'd have too much of an impact. But I like throwing everything in there. I've got the gambits and everything. That's kind of the way I like to play. If I'm not playing on the app, is to just kind of throw everything in there. And it does bring a little bit of theme out into the game. And that's one thing I should mention that we were talking about is, it's kind of cool having the heroes and things and the events, because it adds a little bit more character to the world and the universe. Whereas before it was like, the one thing weird about the game was like spaceship. It's like these faceless cruisers and frigates and, you know, attackers and all that stuff. It's like, it's just spaceships. It's like there's no soul or something. It's like, it's weird, but it's not a big deal. It's kind of a nitpick. But this is cool because you get some character and some actual reality sort of, you know, investing into the world there. So anyway, that is the Crisis packs for Star Realms. Definitely take a look at it. Thanks.